Hello, fabulous third graders. Today we are going to regroup tens. Let's take a look at a word problem. This ferry is transporting passengers from the North Carolina coast to an island of the Outer Banks. It is carrying 245 people. If 119 people get off the ferry, how many people are still on the ferry? So to solve this problem, we need to subtract 245 minus 119. So let's take a look at what this problem looks like when we write it vertically. 245 minus 119. Now, let's take a look at 245 represented with base 10 blocks. We have 2 hundreds blocks, 4 tens blocks, and 5 ones blocks. And we are going to take away 119 from that. So when we subtract, we start at the right-hand side, starting with the ones column. So we have 5 minus 9. Uh-oh, we have to ask ourselves a very important question. Is the bottom number bigger? Then we need to borrow and regroup. So when we look at these numbers in the ones place, we see that yes, the bottom number is bigger than the top number. 9 is greater than 5. So we are going to need to go next door to the tens place and borrow. So we're going to cross out the 4 because we are going to be borrowing one of these tens. And when we borrow one of those tens, that means that we're only left with 3. So we're going to put a 3 above the 4. But what happens to this 10 block when we put it into the ones column? Well, we know that 10 ones make up one of these tens blocks. So we end up with 10 more ones. And so now instead of just 5 in the ones column, we have 15. And so I'm going to write this little 1 next to my 5 to represent that I have 15 in the ones column now instead of just 5. Now I can use my basic subtraction facts to subtract 15 minus 9. And I know that 15 minus 9 equals 6. So what does that look like with our base 10 blocks? Well, remember we had 15 ones now in the ones place because we had to borrow a 10 to make 10 more ones. And so now we're taking 9 away from that. So if I represent that with x's on the ones that I am taking away, I am left with 6 ones. And so I've checked my work, and yes, 15 minus 9 equals 6. Now it's time to move to the tens place. Now instead of that 4, I have 3 because remember, I had to borrow one 10 and I was left with 3. So now my subtraction problem is 3 minus 1. And that's a basic fact that I know. 3 minus 1 equals 2. But what does that look like with our base 10 blocks? Well, you can see that we have 3 tens blocks in the tens column, and I'm taking one of those away. And so I am left with 2. So I've checked my work, and 3 minus 1 equals 2. Finally, we are in the hundreds column, and we have 2 minus 1. That's a basic fact that I know. 2 minus 1 equals 1. So what does that look like with our base 10 blocks? Well, we had 2 hundreds blocks in the hundreds place, and so we're taking one of those away, and we are left with 1. So I've checked my work, and 2 minus 1 equals 1. So the answer to this word problem is 126 people are still on the ferry. So how do I check my work? Here is the original problem, 245 minus 119 equals 126. You can use addition to check that your answer is correct. So if I subtract going down, I can add going up, which means I start with my difference of 126 and I add the 119. And my goal is to get to 245. So let's see if we get that. 6 plus 9 is 15, so I write my 5 and I carry my 1. 1 plus 2 plus 1 equals 4, and 1 plus 1 equals 2. So here is 245 as my sum from 126 plus 119. And yes, it matches the 245 at the top of my subtraction problem. So when those two numbers are alike or are equal, then I know that my work is correct. Let's see subtraction with two-digit numbers. So say I have 48 minus 29. Remember, I start in the ones column, and I have to ask myself, bottom bigger? Yes, that bottom number is bigger. 9 is greater than 8, so I have to borrow and regroup. So I'm going to borrow one of the tens, and when I take one of those tens away from the 4 tens, I'm left with 3. And because the 10 ends up becoming 10 ones, I can put a little 1 here to show that now instead of having 8 ones, I have 18 ones. So 18 minus 9 is a subtraction fact I know, and 18 minus 9 equals 9. So now remember that because I borrowed one of those tens from 4, I'm left with 3. So my subtraction problem in the tens place is now 3 minus 2. And 3 minus 2 equals 1. So let's go ahead and check our work. Remember, if we can subtract down, we can add up. So we're going to take our difference of 19. We're going to add the 29. And our hope is that we end up with 48. So let's see. 9 plus 9 equals 18. So write my 8 and carry my 1. 1 plus 1 plus 2 equals 4. So 48, yes, it matches the 48 at the top of my subtraction problem. So I know that my work is correct and my answer is correct. Let's try a problem with money, money, money. So let's say I have $772 minus 214. Again, I'm going to start in the ones column. 2 minus 4. And I have to ask myself, bottom bigger? Yes, that 4 is greater than the 2. So I have to borrow and regroup. So I'm going to the tens column and I'm going to borrow 1 from the 7. And I'm left with 6 tens. And because I borrowed a 10, that means I can put that in the ones place. So I'm going to put that little 1 there by the 2 to show that instead of only 2 ones, I have 12 ones. And 12 minus 4 is a subtraction problem that I know. So 12 minus 4 is 8. Now remember, because I borrowed 1 from the tens, instead of 7 there, I have 6. So my subtraction problem in the tens place is now 6 minus 1. And 6 minus 1 equals 5. Finally, the hundreds place has the subtraction problem of 7 minus 2, and that equals 5. But remember, because this is a problem with money, 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 I have to include my dollar sign. So let's check our work. Remember, if we can subtract down, we can add up. So we're going to take our difference of $558 and we're going to add that to our $214. And our hope is that we will end up with $772. So let's check it out. 8 plus 4 equals 12. So I write my 2 and I carry my 1. 1 plus 5 plus 1 equals 7. And 5 plus 2 equals 7. And because it is a money problem, don't forget your dollar sign. So, do we have the same number? Is our sum the same as our top number of our subtraction problem? Yes, it is. So I know that my work is correct. Let's try one more problem. This problem is going to give us a two-digit difference. Let's check out 653 minus 625. Remember, we're going to start in the ones place. I have 3 minus 5, so I have to ask myself, bottom bigger? Yes, the 5 is greater than 3, so I need to borrow and regroup. So we're going over to the tens place and we're going to borrow 1 10 from our 5, which leaves us with 4 tens. And because we're moving the 10 into the ones place, we're going to put a little 1 next to the 3 to show that instead of 3 ones, now I have 13 ones. And I can subtract 13 minus 5 because that's the subtraction fact I know. 13 minus 5 equals 8. So now I move on to the tens place, and remember, because we borrowed 1 from the 5, we're left with 4, so the subtraction problem now is 4 minus 2, and that equals 2. But now look at my hundreds place. I have 6 minus 6. Now I know that 6 minus 6 is 0, but I'm not going to write a 0 because I don't write the number 28 with a 0 to 8. I write the number 28 with 2 8. So when we get to the end of a subtraction problem and we end up with zeros, we don't write those zeros down. So 653 minus 625, 28. So let's go ahead and check our work. Remember, when we subtract down, we can add up. So I'm going to take my difference of 28 and I'm going to add that to 625. Now remember, you need to line up your numbers correctly. Your ones have to line up, your tens have to line up, and your hundreds have to line up. In this case of 28, there's nothing in the hundreds place, so the 6 goes under that blank area, which would be a 0 if we wrote it in. If we don't line up an addition problem, then we make a mistake. So 8 plus 5 equals 13. And I'm going to write my 3 and carry my 1. And 1 plus 2 plus 2 equals 5. And 0 plus 6 equals 6. And so my sum of 653 does match the top number of my subtraction problem. And so I know that my work is correct. Ready to try some on your own?